Hey everyone, welcome back to Talking Cardboard. On this episode, we're going to try something different. We're actually going to talk some strategy. As always, if you like what you see here, click the subscribe button, the like button, leave a comment. We're trying something different this time, which means we'd love any kind of feedback we're going to get from everybody out there. As usual, I'm Jurch, to my right is John, to my left is Corey, and this time we're talking strategy about the favorite game of Talking Cardboard, at least right now, and that's Dune Imperium. For John and myself, it was our number one game of all time. For Corey, it was a little bit further down the list. You'll have to check out our top 10 videos to see where it falls on his list, as well as some other great game recommendations from us. So gentlemen, we are talking strategy here. This is not a review video. We're talking about kind of the nuts and bolts of this game and some lines of strategy we've found that have worked and things that haven't. We're also talking about the expansion, The Rise of Ix. We've got all the cards and technology and things like that in this that we're talking about. Yep. So we can start off just going through kind of some of our basic strategies of this game. If you want to see our review video, an overview of Dune Imperium, then click the link below. Otherwise, we're going to jump into this strategy. So John, what is one of the keys to success you found in all the games we've played in Dune Imperium?
I guess just the first thing I'll highlight, and maybe you guys will agree or disagree, but one of the more powerful aspects of this game is the swordmaster. And in Rise of Ix, it's a little harder to get the Solari you need now to get the 8 to buy your swordmaster, but having 3 agents as early as possible in the game is ultra powerful as long as you have the cards to keep sending him places. So, I don't know. That's always one of the first things I usually try to target as I start the game.
And I would say even less so in the base game, because I remember us talking just base game alone early on that, this game doesn't feel like you need as many workers as a typical worker placement game to do what you need to do. But now, especially like you're saying, with all those more options that you have to go for and a little bit more pivoting based on other people's strategies as you see them unfold, that third agent does seem real powerful now. Well,
and that's 50% more actions you get to do around as opposed to others. Even if you're trying to get the Mentat, is you still have to be paying, and then you also have to be jockeying with other people to maybe be the first one to get that or risk it. But if you get your swordmaster, your third agent, that does really start to propel you ahead, where you can start getting more resources or be able to put your agents where they need to be. So, John, you said that that's really important to get that swordmaster. Where do you like putting that extra agent, or what flexibility does that open up for you?
I always get really tied into playing like a hate game. As soon as I see people starting to move up the alliance tracks, that's where my extra agent comes in. I'm hoping that by the time I have all 3 of those, I've gotten a few cards that have extra placements to the factions versus on 2 spots on the board, because those are really covered by the base cards you have. And so that's when I really start to hit that side, try to predict what I think people are going to go to, and just kind of try to sneak ahead of everyone on that faction alliance to get, you get 1 point when you get up to 2 reputation with each alliance, and then you have the alliance tokens themselves. So just trying to inch the top and get that top position before anyone else can is huge. Plus, there's tons of bonuses that come with that. There's really a lot you can do in the faction quarter of the board.
I completely agree. I think that the factions and the ways that you can manipulate them and the other players, that's my biggest key to this whole game.
Yep.
Is if you can jump up those 2 spots right away, you get a victory point. Each one of those tracks, the further you get up, it's not just that you're accumulating victory points, but it's really the strength of what you're able to do when you start to get the alliance token. For the Emperor, you get those 2 troops right away, which is nice because that'll lead into combat, which is also really important. We'll talk about that in a little bit. For the Spacing Guild, is you need to be up on that influence track a couple of spots in order to get to some of these shipping, things like that. Same thing for the Fremen. In order to get to the one of the locations, you need to have 2 influence with the Fremen. So all of those and the actions you can do with a lot of those alliances
Right.
are really important.
And I think with Rise of Ix, you really have to balance how you're moving up on the faction tracks, because before, Fremen were kind of a popular one because there were a lot of cards that had Fremen alliances or Fremen bonds, so you were looking for those to combo with that. You had spaces on the board that you could only go to if you had alliance or 2 influence with the Fremen, the Siege Tabar, or however you say it. And there wasn't really anything else on the board that depended on the factions and where you stood with them.
Yep.
But once you got Rise of Ix in here, the first thing that got taken away is money's a lot harder to come by. So now all of a sudden the Emperor faction's more powerful because you can get money there.
Yes.
And the trading track is also the only other place you can get money. And in order to take 2 trading actions in a turn, you now have to have 2 influence with the Spacing Guild. So now both of those became much more important.
Yep.
Yeah, and then going off with the Spacing Guild is the card Guild Accord. This is a card from the expansion, and some of the benefits of it is if you are using the Spacing Guild, and especially going to the Highliner, which is a huge dump into the combat, and you'll hear this again, combat, that this one, it costs you 2 less spice in order to go there to activate that, and you can sneak in there if somebody else already has an agent there. So that just is such a swoop in and take over combat, which is really a very swingy thing, especially mid and late game. And I guess also I forgot to mention this earlier, but we are playing epic mode.
Yes, yep.
So that has the combat cards are only levels 2 and 3, the conflict cards, and then we've got the augmented starting cards. So there are some rules that make it much more intense, obviously epic mode. But one of the things is you're always playing with all of the 3rd tier combat rewards, and there's a lot of victory points there. So if you're able to get the dump into the combat zone, especially when you're unencumbered, that is such a huge swingy thing to have.
Yep.
Corey, what are your thoughts on that combat?
I think this segues perfectly into what I was going to say. I think for me, this is going to be more of what not to do type of strategy than versus what to do, because I am terrible at the game. I'm not very good at the game, but I typically go after the strategy where, yes, what's the red faction here? The Spacing Guild is a lot more important in this for obvious reasons with the trading or with the shipping out things, because you can hop up, hop down right away, get the coins you need, that sort of thing, kind of shoot yourself out into a position to get your dreadnoughts right away. I think, yes, combat is super heavy in this, but like Church was saying, some of these other spots to garrison troops and add them to the conflict are seemingly a lot more important than just trying to shoot out and get your dreadnought as quickly as possible. That strategy has never worked for me. I think what's more important, and from what I've learned after watching these guys play the game a lot better, is that I think getting enough of the influence or more influence early on in the game to go after those higher costing cards, those better cards, to fill your deck in your hand with those better cards is much more important. The first card Church points out here is a 6 cost card. I think I was almost halfway through the game and could barely afford a 5 cost. Or trying to find ways to reduce the cost of these cards to get those, to fill your deck with those better cards is so much more important in this.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a deck builder as the base engine of it. So it is handcrafting, it is deck crafting, it is managing the resources that you're getting from the residuals of these cards that is so incredibly important. And with the handcrafting is things, a couple other cards that I pulled out also where you are able to like be getting rid of cards from your deck, thinning out your deck. So you see the cards that you like more and more. Some of the combat ones, the Imperial Basher, why I picked that one out is that's comboing combat over combat, where if you save it for your reveal phase, you get 1 influence and then 2 combat, plus 1 combat for each other revealed card that provides 1 or more combat this turn. So it's things that nobody else sees until you're revealing, where you don't look like you're getting too far ahead to then kind of, it would force other people to join the fray. But if you're holding something like that back and then you're able to play this card down, as you're revealing, nobody really has a chance to counter.
Right.
So it's holding back and then playing
it acts
that out.
like an intrigue card without needing to go get the intrigue.
And we'll definitely get to intrigue cards. But it's things like that if you are crafting those types of cards into your hand and then you're playing it when you're revealing, that people can't counter that. And especially when it comes to combat, then you're just adding more and more And in all the different parts of this game, we're going to get to things that really are kind of the cloak and dagger, pun intended, for combat, but also for other things you're trying to do. I think that's a really, really important part of this game, is to not look like you're getting too far ahead at anything, is to play everything really close to the vest until nobody else can counter.
Yep, and I would definitely agree and expand on that. I think this last game we played in particular, I was really focusing on, like you said, just trying to get the minimum guys or troops into the conflict so it didn't look like I had a strong presence, but then load up on cards and technologies that provided me a huge boost on turns to my combat strength. So obviously I had restricted ordnance technology. Hopefully they can see that. Basically, once I got my high council seat, I'm getting 4 combat every turn. The artillery token,
which is super cheap. It only costs 1 spice.
1 spice, and usually if you take the action to buy a technology, you're already getting -1 anyway. So usually this is going to be free, and that's going to provide +1 combat strength for each card you reveal that has combat on it. So again, another boost during your reveal turn. And then I was focusing on cards that, like the Scout, Gunthopter, Imperial Shock Trooper, that provided me bonus swords, like tons of swords, to add to my combat strength. But they also had things where, let's say I knew I was the last player and I could tell, okay, I'm not taking first. Now I have options on these cards to either add more troops from the garrison to maybe get that extra boost, or I have cards that, maybe let me retreat a couple of troops so that I'm still maybe getting second, but I'm using exactly the amount of troops I need, and that's it. Because your troops die at the end of combat, regardless, win or lose.
Except for the dreadnoughts.
Right.
Yep. But yes, that is crucial, as there are cards, and there are sometimes intrigue cards as well that can be mitigating what troops are in the combat after other people have done theirs. But if you can have those cards in your hand and not have to worry about the chance of the intrigue deck, like, your combat was almost unstoppable towards the end. You were able to just be shuffling in and out.
I was hitting like 20 plus combat strength every turn, regardless of how many troops I actually got into the combat.
So then you were able to dictate what everybody else was doing. And that's kind of what I like to do when I'm playing this game is, first of all, I have to hang back and keep everything close to the chest. But I also like to dictate what other people are doing, to kind of force their hands, not at the expense of what I'm trying to do, but the card The Voice, where it's a 2 cost, but then you get to hold off, you get to block off a specific space from anybody going to until your next turn, is just annoying. But it also kind of throws people off their game. Maybe they were thinking about going there, maybe not. But the fact that now something is restricted from them, it just starts to mess up their engines. And then I'm able to kind of keep doing what I'm trying to do and do it subtly as well. So things like that, where you're able to just be shuffling everything around the board, are really, really important.
And that plays into the hero that I almost always play.
I
don't know how many times I've played as Helena Richisi, but essentially her passive ability is that enemy agents don't block my agents when they go to the green or purple spaces. And the green, probably not as important. I mean, it would allow me to get my swordmaster or High Council seat if someone already went there. But the purple spots are really important, because that's where you're looking at, drawing 3 extra cards, or garrisoning a troop, getting an intrigue card, or an extra card in a garrison troop. Like, I can just hold back, sit on my last card, do the other actions that will fill up spots now that others cannot take, and then I can use my passive ability to kind of just be like, oh, yeah, let's draw 3 extra cards and just add it to my hand for my reveal phase, and maybe I'm adding more swords or influence to buy some of those higher cost cards. And getting cards out of your deck and into your hand, whenever you can do that's important. So
I think that's the thing that you do best in this game, John, is you are able to do the synergy with your character. And you do have a favorite character, and you know her synergy, and you're using the signet ring, you're using the powers, that all those, for any character, if you use it right, it gives you a huge, huge, huge advantage. The character that I picked out is Count Ilban Richisi. Not that he is my favorite character in this, but the fact that his signet ring is just a free extra Solari, and like we said in the beginning, it's very difficult to be getting money. So wanting to play that and not save your signet ring for the reveal phase, you're getting money. And then the Ruthless Negotiators, whenever you're paying money for a board space, then you get to draw a card. And I'm really big in this game on cycling through your deck, drawing cards. So I'm usually the one that ends up with the Mentat a lot because I like drawing the cards cycling through, and that's exactly what this guy wants to do.
You draw 2 cards because you also get a card with the Mentat.
Yep.
So even better.
And again, another one of my things is then the Mentat is it's kind of pushing your turn down the road, so then you're getting an extra turn after other people go where they can't counter you anymore. So it's things like that that are all starting to build on itself. So if you can figure out what your character wants to do and really lean into it, then that, makes any character really important or impactful.
A whole lot of synergy in this game with everything you're doing, and a whole lot less of a deck building game and more of a deck crafting game.
Yes.
I think. So that might throw some people off when they think of deck building in the traditional sense, but you're really crafting your deck, crafting your hand, trying to combo with your character. Not only that, but with technology, is you really want to synergize everything the best you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is there's a lot going on in this game. So it's not for the faint of heart. But for those of us we've played it a lot, we've played it with each other a lot, so we know kind of each other's tendencies. We have characters that we kind of gravitate towards when they come up. So we are playing games within a game now. And that's why we felt comfortable starting to talk deeper strategy like this. One of the new elements that was brought in with the expansion, The Rise of Ix, are the technologies. And those are kind of a newer area for us even. When you see something new and shiny to a game, you're always gravitating towards it. So it's the new piece you want to add without really understanding it. But a lot of these technologies can be really useful. Some of the ones that you mentioned about combat. Again, we've stressed the importance of the combat, especially when it's the level 3 conflict cards and you're getting 2 or possibly 3 victory points for winning. That's really, really important. Ones that I picked out are the memo quarters and the shuttle fleet. So the shuttle fleet costs you 6 spice, and the first thing is you get to go up 1 influence on 2 of the different factions. And that's one of the things that I talked about at the beginning that was really important are those factions. So when you pay for that, you're getting to move up on these, and hopefully you're doing that in a stretch run to where you get to the top where nobody else can take the alliance token from you. Then that's a victory point in your back pocket nobody can touch. I know especially late game there's a lot of push and pull between us that are trying to secure those or steal it away, and it gets very swingy. But if you can at the right time push to the top of those, and then you've got those victory points in your back pocket, nobody can touch it. Then again, at the start of each round for the shuttle fleet, you get 2 Solari. So it's another very important resource that you're just going to be getting every single round. The cost of 6 spice is pretty high, but if you can afford it, that's really starting to...
And there's ways to mitigate it. I mean, the trading track reduces the cost if you get to the top of a tech by 2.
Yeah.
Or you can put researchers into the Ix planet, which then reduce the cost by 1 for each researcher you choose to spend. So a lot of ways to mitigate those costs and get a better value out of those tech cards when you grab them.
Yeah. And then another one, which kind of transitions to then the intrigue cards, was the memo quarters. And that was only 2 cost. And that says that it's endgame scoring, so you get a victory point endgame if you have 3 influence or more on all 4 of the different faction tracks. So endgame scoring is something nobody else can touch or mess with. And then you are able to just have that at the end and, kind of sprint to the finish. That combines with one of the intrigue cards, plans within plans, which helped me win last time we played. And that says that if you have 3 more influence on 3 faction tracks, you get 1 victory point endgame scoring. If you have 3 more influence on all 4 tracks, you get 2 victory points at the end of the game. So if you're able to combo those 2 things together, that could be 3 victory points once somebody's finished that nobody else can touch. And especially these, when it's just your influence on these tracks, it doesn't even depend on anybody else. There's nothing they can really do to stop you getting those types of influence. And Corey, I guess, would you touch on a little bit of the intrigue cards and kind of your philosophy with going after them?
Yeah, I mean, intrigue cards are always good too. I think they're very powerful. I think they can be easily underestimated if you're not necessarily going after them. They can be that ace in the hole, the ace up your sleeve that nobody sees coming, like we talked about in the beginning of the video too. That level of cloak and dagger, like being under the radar and just coming in at that right moment to do what you need to do. to come ahead is very important. Like in baseball, this game is really a game of inches. A lot of the combats are won by 1, 2, maybe 3 combat at the most, and an intrigue card or something as simple as maybe a technology or something to squeak ahead, just an extra couple combat, could be the difference in 2 victory points versus none type of deal. And when you're having a game where Endgame is triggered with 12 victory points, 2 is a ton of points.
Yes, it is.
So yes, points are very very heavy in this game, and are won by inches. So I'm just going to keep coming back to that. So.
Yeah, well, and then that brings up some of the other intrigue cards that I kind of picked out, like the War Chest, where you could spend 2 Solari in order to get 4 extra combat. Or you can have that end game scoring. If you have 10 extra Solari at the end, it's a victory point. So it's things like that. Reinforcements is another one. If you're in your reveal phase, you can spend 3 Solari to add 3 troops and then potentially push them into combat as well. So those types of things, again, you're keeping them close to the chest, but then you're able to push into the combat to get those extra victory points, get some tiebreakers going there. And we only have a few that we've picked out of these intrigue cards, so you kind of have to hunt for them, or you just not lean into that strategy. John, what were some of the intrigue cards that you picked out?
Some of the ones I've found useful are if you can actually craft your deck the right way to be able to get a turn where you get all 3 of your agents onto one of the faction spots, is this quid pro quo. This worked almost really well for me, but essentially you're paying 2 spice during your plot phase, so usually after I play my 3rd agent, and you get to go up 1 influence with every faction that you have an agent on one of their spots. So you could be looking up to 3 influence that you're gaining by paying 2 spice. Other things that I find are really good are like Water of Life. You're paying some resources, but you're drawing 3 cards. And like I said before, cycling through your deck, getting more cards into your hand so you can have that big turn where you reveal, and now you're adding 10 attack power to your combat, or more influence to maybe get you a higher cost card, or even a spice must flow, just so you have that extra bonus victory point now from that is huge. And as always, the combat cards are always good. Throwing those out, I mean, there might be some back and forth. I usually focus on the ones, like one I had last game was, you play, you get 2 more combat, and each opponent has to retreat a dreadnought. I mean, that's incredibly swingy. That's a swing of 5 power on both your opponents if they had a dreadnought in there. So things like that I just find really good. I mean, there are definitely some intrigue cards that feel like misses, but I think for the most part, everything is pretty useful, minus a few cards that are very situational.
Yeah, and situational that could be, but that's part of what makes them intriguing, and also what makes it risky. Right,
and that's a big part of this game too. Is a lot of times you're waiting for things to fall into place at your turn. Like there are definitely times where it's like, okay, I got the first player token. Somehow I managed to have 7 spice, 3 water, whatever, and you're like, okay, I know I'm first next. This is my time to right off the bat jump on Highliner, or right off the bat I know the makers have added 2 spice to the high spot, the Great Flat, where you just gather spice, and you're like, okay, this is it. This is my time to make that big play, and then just see what you can make of it.
And that's a good point. A lot of this strategy in the game is when to pounce, and knowing that you better pounce now because this is going to get eaten up.
And you really have to be aware of what other people's resources are. You cannot just sit and look at what you have. You got to be like, okay, I'm first, and you each have 1 water, and I have 2, and it's like, well, thought is just buy the 3 spice for 2 water right off the bat. But it's like, no, let's wait that out, because you can make another play. In worst case, maybe someone now goes and gets the 1 water, and now they're thinking they can go get it. But you're like, well, us will be able to play before you and take it. So you can kind of optimize your worker placement to...
Well, and the tone that you kind of were having there, it's more of you're making the decisions, and that's causing other people to have to
pivot against what you're doing,
as opposed to trying to play the other players,
be reactive to what they're doing.
A little bit of bluffing in this game. There's a little bit making your opponents think you can't pull off what you can pull off.
Yes,
and then sneaking up from behind them and doing it,
or vice versa, trying to hold back some of those tie-breaking combat intrigue cards. And trying to make people think, well, do I have to push more, and then just doing the basic math here. And I think that's really important to get people to overinvest as well. Or if people start to pit off each other, and then you can just sit back and not have to waste your resources when two people are going to tie for first place, so then nobody gets the victory point reward. Then they both drop down to the second place, which is just going to be like 3 spice and a intrigue card.
Right, and that's why, again, I love these passive buffs to my combat, because let's say I get one guy in, well, now everyone's going to have to contribute at least 3 troops to tie me.
Yes.
Where I have one guy invested, and now I have really tons of openings to do whatever else I want that turn, because maybe I am content on getting second. So I just stop feeding guys into the combat.
Yep. And that's something to be very aware of in this game. And like I said earlier, some of the things I do poorly at and that I'm going to try to get better at is not overspending on things. And that includes adding garrison troops into the conflict, because adding one too many that wouldn't have mattered otherwise, holding that guy back into the garrison for the next round might make all the difference in winning that next card. Same thing with the cards. They're very well balanced. I know we talk combat, but the cards from the 3 to 4 cost, from 4 to a 5 to, if that one extra cost could mean all the difference in synergizing with your hand.
Yes.
And if you're just that one extra influence away from getting that exact card you needed, and you have to settle for either a card that's lesser that won't help you out, or even worse, what I ran into, I'm not even going to add a card to my deck because it's just going to clog it up. It's a wasted turn.
I think that brings up a good point. Is, early on when we played this game, I think people felt like, oh, I have 3 influence, I need to buy something.
Gotta spend it.
I need to get a card into my deck. And as we've gone on, obviously, like Corey said, maybe you don't buy a card. If there's nothing out there that's going to help craft your deck into something more synergistic, it's probably not worth adding. And it's just, get your combat, end your turn, and move on with your life.
It's not a deck builder, it's a deck crafter.
Yeah.
Well, and then also, if you're buying these low ones just to try to get something slightly better in your deck, then you're refreshing the board for somebody else to maybe get the card you're looking for.
Right.
So let's just think of our one big thing that we would want as a takeaway for anybody viewing this that's trying to get more strategy in their Dune Imperium experience. So John, what do you think is your one big takeaway, your one strategy that you'd kind of want to leave people with?
I think it's actually very much what Corey kind of alluded to, is that managing your resources efficiently so you are not overpaying for anything you do, regardless if it's the troops you're committing to combat or the water or spice you're paying for the resources or the benefit that you get from whatever you're spending. You really want to make the most min-maxed moves, I think, because everything is neck and neck always. So being able to save even one troop from dying at the end of the round is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, what do you think, Corey? What's your one big takeaway strategy, successful play line?
I think the key word is efficiency in this game. Like John said, I'm not going to say the same thing he said, but to give another pointer would be the whole card strategy. Again, it's come at it like it's more of a card crafting thing and board awareness. Be aware of your opponents, what they're doing. Like John said too, you can kind of hate draft or hate buy. Use your ability on your leader the best you can, and maybe try to synergize some cards with it the best you can too. I think coming off, why are you giving me that look?
Nothing. I was just going to say literally the 2 keywords I think are synergy and efficiency.
Yeah.
Everything else is good and dandy, but those are the keywords for this game.
And I guess to cap off my statement with that is, I think when we first bought this game, and it could have been me, I thought it was just going to be, another deck builder like Clank. You just build some cards and you throw some guys out and get research. It's like the depth to this and the efficiency and synergy you need with this is so much more in depth than you would ever see at first glance.
Yes.
And it is a game you can get better with, not only with the meta game when you play with the same players over and over again, but I think the overall efficiency puzzle is something you can get better at no matter who you're playing against. So
yeah, and I think for me the most important thing is that cloak and dagger. It's the secrecy that you can go about doing your things where people don't expect, they don't counter because they don't know what's coming. If somebody is getting out far ahead, you've got other people that are going to try to stop it, try to block, try to hate play or hate grab cards or try to go at them in combat just to tie. But if you are hanging in the weeds, you're doing things secretly with those intrigue cards or with building up the factions, and then you get to a point where you get an alliance that nobody else can top, or you've got 2 endgame victory points in the bag that nobody knows about, then people aren't gunning for you, and then you're able to sneak to the win or just slowly progress where nobody knows what you're trying to do, so they don't know to stop you. And that happens through a lot of synergy or min-maxing or things like that. But I think just the more you can play things close to the vest, the better.
And it's interesting and really cool to see how thematic that is within the theme.
Yeah.
And how the designers purposefully integrated that into the gameplay.
Yeah. And that's why we love this game is we have different experiences every time we play. We have different strategies or things that we know. If videos like this are really appealing, we want to be doing more in-depth, more getting down into games where it's not a review or a first impressions. And we're starting with games we really love and really understand a lot of the math and the probability and the strategy behind a lot of these things. So these are the types of games we will be delving into here, where it's good discussion, where we can look at the comments to see if people have tried other strategies that have worked. We know there are plenty of other resources out there to be learning strategies for these games, but this is a game we feel like we really own and are passionate about, that want to share our strategies. You know, so now we know each other's strategies a little bit more for this, but it's also for making us better at this game. And I know for this one in particular, we play it so much, we love it so much, that figuring out how to best play this game is part of the fun.
Yeah. And I think we really enjoy talking about this sort of thing too, so we'll probably keep pumping out these videos for a while, regardless of the response to it. But really, the more thumbs up, the more comments we get, the more interest we receive from you all in this type of video, the more encouraged we'll be to keep pumping these up more frequently too.
Yeah, and I'd definitely be curious to hear for people that play games like Dune Imperium. What do you think of the strategies that we've talked about? Are there things maybe we're completely missing? I'd definitely be curious to see what else is out there and maybe use it to tweak my own gameplay.
We're not pros by all means. So.
Yeah, far from it.
Yeah.
So from all of us here at Talking Cardboard, we hope you like this strategy. We hope it benefits you and makes you a better player at Dune Imperium.